Hi.
Good to have you with us again.
Hi, good to be live with you, Paul.
Absolutely, yeah. In the first of our new series, the Recruiters Roundtable.
Yeah. Love it.
All things recruitment.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we'll set the scene.
Yeah.
More, this was your idea
It
a few
was.
months ago that we should come together and collaborate and share our knowledge and experience with
Yes.
the world. Thanks for putting us up to the test.
Well, do you know what? You're very welcome, Paul. I just think that we get asked, I mean, we're in HR recruitment, you're in finance recruitment. We've both been doing it a really long time. And I think, you know, whenever we meet, we always kind of share what's going on in our world. And a lot of it is the same when we get asked a lot of the same stuff. So this seems like a great idea so that people can ask if they want to, or they can learn from what we've got to say, or they can totally ignore us if they want. But, you know, hopefully not, but great to share some of our experience. And I think because the market is ever changing at the moment and people are often asking us how it is and how's it going, it's just good to have a regular slot to be able to share that with people, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we forget how much we know and how much people value our opinion, both on the current market and generally what we take as for granted sometimes, the day-to-day element of recruitment. And I think we can be absolutely a valuable ally.
Hope so.
And sometimes, I don't know about how you feel, but we're often thanked for the people that we don't place. You know, not everybody that we engage with, we will find a job for, but it's about how you add value to their job search throughout that process.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, often the nicest thank yous are for the people that we actually don't get the job for, but help along the way. And hopefully this can help too.
Especially now, I think, because it is a challenging market. There's lots of people out there looking and feels to them like they're competing for the same jobs. It can feel a bit noisy out there, but actually there are things you can do to really help yourself. And if you understand the market, maybe it makes that a little bit easier as well.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And maybe we should start by setting the scene more in terms of both of our businesses, because your audience will probably know you and mine might know me, but they might not know each other. But perhaps we can just maybe start by the reason we are collaborating is we realised several months ago, didn't we, when we reconnected at one of the Entrepreneurs Forum events, how similar our businesses are.
Yeah, for sure. So I think, so my business is Sullivan Brown HR Recruitment. We are HR recruitment specialists. I've been a HR recruiter for 27 years, Paul, before the internet, before anything. And we're a really service relationship focused business. And so, I think when we met, you know, not all recruitment businesses are like that. I'm sorry to say, but I think when we met, we realized that we're working in the same ways with the same ethics and values, albeit in different sectors.
Absolutely. And for those that might not know me, we're Paul Card Recruitment. We specialise in accountancy and finance recruitment across the Northeast at levels from CFO, finance director, through to finance assistant. So we're based down here in Teesside. More obviously, you cover the Northeast and the Northwest, don't you? From the kind of
and
two
to be
bases,
fair, we're currently recruiting in Afghanistan and Angola as well. So we do global.
Wow. Good on you. We had an opportunity for Cyprus come across our desk the other day. We passed it on to another partner that we engage with. So that's us. And as you say, we realise that we share the same values, the same ethics, and the same CRM, which is absolutely
But that's not
great.
a coincidence. You recommended it to us, and I snapped it up. So.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And we don't share data.
No,
we do
no.
the same platform.
Just to be clear.
So great. Obviously, in this edition of the Recruiters Roundtable, we wanted to focus on top 10 tips to create a fantastic CV. I think it is the most common question we get asked. And I think I would like to start by actually saying what we say here today is not the definitive answer. I think if anything in the recruitment process is most subjective and there is a wide range of opinions, it's going to be on CVs.
No, absolutely. And you know, I see things put on LinkedIn about CV advice that I think, I don't agree with that. I think, but other things that I do. I think the thing is that we are recruiters and people ask, how do I make my CV stand out? And I can only answer what makes your CV stand out to me. You know, and what works for me when you're trying to kind of get me to pick up the phone and call you as a result of seeing a CV. And I think especially now when we receive a lot of CVs for every role that we put out there right now, it's important that we we get all of the information that we need and that your CV is doing the best job for you as a candidate, I think. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't think there are any definitive answers for this, because much as people think there's an AI bot somewhere reading every CV, and there's a formula that you can follow, that's not really the case. And essentially, we're humans, so we will all have different preferences about how we receive information. But I definitely think there are things that we agree on that you can do to help yourself. And I think, go with what feels comfortable for you and what represents you best. But do listen to what we're saying, because we do spend the majority of our working days sometimes just reviewing CVs, and we will, some of our opinions will be useful. But go with the ones you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, and I think that's also probably interesting to point out that the time, I think the average statistic across the industry is that a CV gets around about 30 seconds of consideration. Have you any advance on that, Mo?
Well, yeah, it's an interesting one, that, isn't it? Because I like to think that I give CVs a lot more time consideration than that, but I think it will vary depending on the CV. So there are some, as a recruiter, it's my job to make sure that I'm counting people into a process and not out of it.
Yeah.
So I strongly believe that. And I know that's not something that all recruiters think, but that's what I believe. It's about counting people in rather than counting people out. So I want there to be enough on that CV for me to be curious enough to pick up the phone. And I think that's what you want as well if you're applying for a job with me. So some I will give no more than 30 seconds. Yeah, to be fair, if I see it and I can see straight away it's not, that person's not relevant for the job. But others, I think you need to give more, because it can be harder to find the information. And if we're doing right by our client, we owe it to our client and to our candidates and those applicants to give it more than 30 seconds so that we do them justice. But if you're an internal recruiter, so if you're not a specialist recruiter like we are, and I've done a couple of stints working with clients like that, if I'm trying to review CVs for 10 different vacancies in 10 different disciplines, I just might not have the time to do that. So yeah, I think that, that could absolutely influence that average for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think equally another good starting point is the CV is the document that effectively should open up a conversation. Yes. That is your objective. When you're preparing a CV, it's a snapshot of who you are, relevant and related to that post that you're applying for, that is going to stimulate interest to get you further in that process.
Yeah, for sure.
And of course, what that process looks like might be very different, whether you apply to an agency or to the employer direct. That's perhaps where we add value, the ability to sift and do that pre-screening and frankly have the time and expertise to add that additional layer of filtering to a recruitment process on behalf of an employer. We understand that busy business owners, finance directors, chief people officers and internal recruitment teams do not perhaps have the luxury of time. And that's often what you are buying when you engage with a recruiter. From both an employer's perspective and an applicant's perspective, is that ability to actually have a pre-conversation, a precursor, before any kind of sifting or validation or qualification takes place. It's that element of, is this going to be right for you?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think one of the advantages that we have as a specialist is that we will know some of the people that are applying already, and we will have interviewed them previously, so we can make a quicker decision on those people and whether they're suitable for the job, and then pick up the phone. And there's already an element of trust there. I think when you're recruiting in an area that you haven't recruited in before, and you are receiving lots of CVs, as I have been recently on a couple of jobs, that's where really you've got to utilize all of our years of experience to try and make initial judgments on a CV. Should I pick up the phone to this person? Should I ask for more information? But I think, we will all have our own ways of doing that. My team will do that differently. We're all humans at the end of the day, and we are reading a document that is selling a human being. And I think that's one of the things that I always try and remember. There's a person on the other side of this document. So, and when I first started in recruitment 27 years ago, no internet, so no email, no job boards, none of that. The CVs would come after seeing an application and, an advert in a newspaper, but it was still a CV. Here we are 27 years later. We've got job boards, LinkedIn, Glassdoor. We've got all of these different ways of engaging, but a CV still sits at the heart of every recruitment process. So ultimately, if you're applying for a job, that CV is still going to be crucial to whether you secure an interview, get an initial call, are successful. It's still your foot in the door. And so you have to think about how that's going to represent you, because that's the thing that's going to catch someone's interest. I know there's lots of debate about cover letters and things like that. I love a covering letter, but you've got to get them right, and they've got to be in the right space. I think getting your CV right will really help you to either secure an interview or not, or at least get an initial fact-find phone call. So it's worth investing the time in it, I think, and understanding what recruiters are looking for when it lands with them at the other side.
And I think you make a really interesting point there, that through the time that we've been in the industry, how things have changed. And I think that not only has the recruitment landscape changed, but actually as is the way that we communicate. And I think that communication is crucial. It's often probably the most common frustration we hear from applicants, that they don't receive enough feedback from employers, or that their application just goes into the ether, they never hear back. I know that we both pride ourselves on responding to every single application. But what is really interesting is that, I don't know how you feel, Mo, but I certainly feel like the amount of telephone calls we receive is, I wouldn't say an all-time low, but a drastic shift from when we were starting out our career. Virtually every application came in with a phone call. Is that job right for me? And I think it's symptomatic of how society's changed. Instant messaging, rather than picking up the phone call. I was held an online forum during the week, and we were laughing about how our teenagers choose to communicate. And that isn't through the means, generally, of a telephone conversation.
No, it definitely isn't. And even in our world now, I always think, when I get a CV and it's interesting to me, I will pick up the phone to see whether there's information, whether what I'm reading is as it is, and to understand the context that sits behind it a little bit. So I will pick up the phone. But it's very rare that I get anyone first time. So I'll ring and sometimes I laugh when I'm in the office and I'm following up on CVs, and I can spend a whole day just leaving messages for people. And then everyone calls me back, at lunchtime or at night. And it's really unusual. Whereas if I text, I tend to get an immediate response, but I still prefer to pick up the phone and engage with someone. But I suppose the question people might want to know, if they're kind of tuning into this, is, well, why would you pick up the phone to me? What would make you do that? What do I need to put on my CV to make sure that I'm the one that gets a phone call? Because you can't always call everybody. And I think, I think there are things that I immediately engage with when I look at a CV, and it kind of makes my heart sing a little bit as soon as I see it. And I'm sure, you will have the same. So I'm going to...
What do you look for in a CV then, Mo? What do you like to see?
So first of all, I like it to be in a nice, clear format. So I have ADHD, and so I struggle with long paragraphs of information. So I think it's well worth people understanding that people will be receiving things in different ways at the other end. But I think a really nice, clear CV that, as soon as I look at it, I have all the information I need to make a snap decision on whether I should pick up the phone to you. So, and I say this a lot on LinkedIn, especially when there's lots of applications out there at the moment. I see this kind of increasing trend for maybe being vague with your CV in the hope that the recruiter will be curious and pick up the phone. So where do you live? The UK. That doesn't help me really if I've got a client that's looking for someone specifically in Manchester, for example. And, hopefully I will have the time to pick up the phone and ask you that information or email you back. But I would much prefer it if someone just put it on their CV in the first place. So I say, don't try to be too mysterious. Ultimately, your CV is a document that's representing you, and not every recruiter is going to have the time to follow up that curiosity or to fill in the gaps for you. So I try and say, make it clear, make sure on that front page I can see who you are and what you do. Be specific and tell me everything I need to know. Where do you work? What do you do? Where are you based? That kind of thing. Those things I think really matter, and it makes our life much easier, which in turn is going to make it much more likely that you're going to get a quick response.
Yeah. And it is surprising that we still do receive CVs without contact details
Yes.
on.
Yeah.
And you just think, wow, come on, how are you going to actually receive a response if there's no contact details? It's just an email address.
Yeah.
But it does happen.
It does happen. But likewise, don't spend the first half of the first page just writing your address out nicely, because there's a lot of information that you want to get on there. So I always think, you should have your current job. It should be on the first page of your CV, because we want to know what you do and where you do it. That's important to us. We want to know where you live, because even in the world of hybrid, where jobs can, in theory, be done from anywhere, the majority of our clients want somebody who's is at least within commutable distance or easy reach of that office. So tell us, if that's the case. If you're applying for a job in Manchester and your CV says London, for example, then I've immediately got to try and figure out, well, are you relocating? Or are you telling me that you're going to travel for 2 days? Or are you saying that you'll relocate for the right job? It would be much better for me if you said so on your CV or your application, because it takes time. If I receive 80 odd applications, which I just did for a HRD role we're doing, for me to have to call 30 people to find out whether you're relocating, whether you live close to the job, etc. It's time consuming, and it diminishes the time that we have to respond to people. So I love it when I look at a CV and I can go, okay, I understand this person. I can see where they are. I can see what they do. I can see why they're applying. That makes sense to me. I'm going to pick up the phone. Yeah. What about you?
So, I absolutely agree. Everything you've said there. I think there's very few things that are more off-putting than just a mountain of information and just overload and overwhelm and too many buzzwords. And they've almost tried to optimize it for applicant trapping systems to be found. But we still do receive CVs where you just say, wow, I'm overwhelmed. So that would almost be the counter argument to everything positive that you said there is, be careful, don't put too much in there.
Not too much. And also make sure that when you are writing about your achievements and the experience that you have, do take the time to make sure that you're putting the relevant experience underneath the job, within the job section where you actually did that. Because sometimes I see CVs where it's a whole kind of 2 pages of experience and then a career history underneath. And I think that's great. But, to me, in my world, say, for example, let's say a HR thing. Let's say that you are talking about the fact that you did a 2P transfer. So you have done a transfer of undertakings because you've bought another business and you're having to move people in contractually into your business or out of your business. If you've done that in a business that has 250 people in it, great. If you've done that in a business that has 2,000 people in it, that's a very different kettle of fish. If you've done that in a unionized environment, that's different again. If you've done it in a manufacturing environment, that might be different to a service environment. If I don't know which job you did that within, it's really hard for me to understand the context of your experience. So I think, a lot of people do, well, not a lot of people, but I do see it, just a big list of experience and then a list of jobs. And so I always ask that people and recommend that people do put the relevant experience within the job section of the job that they did it, so that people can understand the context within which it sits, because that is important. And most people that are sending us a CV probably also recruited and reviewed CVs themselves. And I think they would want to know that information too.
Yeah, and I think the really interesting word you used there, and it was one of my top tips, is that contextualise of the experience. And I'd like to see underneath the employer and the role in which that person held, a couple of sentences describing that environment. So usually the business sector, the turnover, the profit or EBITDA in our world, the headcount, the structure, the reporting lines. Contextualise that experience. I think it's more relevant for more senior applicants, perhaps, at the early stage of the career, when people's ability to transcend industries is a little bit easier. But I like that. If we're recruiting a head of finance director for a manufacturing business, they will tell me, I want somebody from manufacturing. Now, we're fortunate in that we've been in the industry for a long time, so there's probably not many businesses across the northeast or northwest that we don't know or understand who they are, what they do, what size they are. But if you haven't had that exposure to working with a broad spectrum of the industry across a region, particularly if you, as you say, you're getting a relocator and you might not understand the employers within the southwest of England and who they are and what they do, that really helps to educate the reader of your CV and elevate instantly, in my opinion, the credibility of that application.
I would say assume we know nothing. So when you're writing a CV for somebody to apply for a job, assume that the person that's receiving it knows absolutely nothing about you or about the companies that you've worked in. And just make sure that it answers the questions that you would want to know if you were reviewing someone's CV when you were looking at them for a job. So what did the company do? What size of company? What did I actually do? What did I achieve? Does, and then have a read back and go, does this represent me? Do I think that this is actually talking about who I am? And don't worry too much about selling. I think just include the so what. So, if you're, don't be too general. So I won't even try a finance analogy. I'll definitely go for a HR one. I was about to then and thought, no, that's really stupid. So say for a HR one. So if it says leadership of the HR team, that could be a bullet point in the duties and responsibilities of anyone from kind of HR business partner upwards. That's great. But what's the headcount of the business? What's the size of the team? What's the structure of the team? And also, so what? So you lead that team, but what have the outcomes of leading that team be? What do you mean by leading a team? What have you achieved by doing that? Because most people in a leadership role are going to be able to say that they led the team. But what's the so what about what you're doing? And I think that's the thing. Don't feel that you have to be over salesy, but do think about the thing that makes you stand out from somebody else that is applying for the same job, that will also be able to say, I led the HR team, because most people will be able to at a leadership level, say, for example, or at a more junior level in HR, you might say, carried out disciplinary and grievance hearings. Okay, well, that's great. But again, most HR advisors, HR assistants, HR business partners, anyone from that level up will be able to put that on their CV. What did you do in that? How many of those did you do? What was your role? What were the outcomes? Where did you influence the outcomes? What was the so what? I think that's so important when you get a CV. And I love it when I get a CV that tells me that.
So one of my top tips, and interestingly, again, aligns with exactly what you're talking about there, Mo, is tailoring the CV to the application. Now, it's time consuming, but it's worth the effort, in my opinion. You don't want any job. You want the job that is right for you. And I think not enough time is spent on tailoring CVs. And I think you can spot a CV when it's one size fits all. I've tried to cover off absolutely everything that I've done, but it's not specifically tailored towards the job description or the advert which the person has seen. And I think there's ways that can be done and achieved more easily. I think even just reordering the priority of your achievements. So actually, if there's a requirement for a CFO to raise finance, that's absolutely the one that should be clear on your achievements. How much finance, when, for what purposes, and how did you do it? Mergers and acquisitions, how many, what was the size, what did you do, and what were the outcomes, what were the achievements, and just reordering some of those achievements. But I think another way that can be done, and here's one of my top tips, but I'd be really interested to hear yours more on your opinion on this, is a personal statement.
I love a personal statement.
It's a common question we get asked. Should I include a personal statement? What's your opinion, Mo?
I love a personal statement, personal profile, when they're done well. So I think the ones that don't really work are where there's lots of generics in there. So if your personal statement says that you have great communication skills, that you're a natural leader, that you're great at building relationships, I think most people would maybe think that about themselves. So try not to be too generic with it. Don't put something that everyone is able to put. And also don't put something that's subjective, because what your idea of a great team player is might be different to mine, might be different to somebody else's. So I think, but a personal statement I really like, because that is a summary of what you can do. So to your point there, Paul, you can change that up without having to change your whole CV. So maybe just even 10 lines that sit at the top of your CV that you change for whatever job you're applying to that's relevant to that job. So, an experienced strategic HR leader with over 25 years experience, gained in these sectors with specific experience of leading TUPE transfers, integrations, change programs, employee wellbeing, that kind of thing, with improving employee NPS from this to this. I think, if you can put something in there that's really specific to what you're applying for, then that's great. So I love a personal statement. Huge fan of them when they're done well. But
Yes.
but if you write one, read it back and go, do I recognize myself from that? Could anyone write that? Is it really saying what I needed to say? But yeah, for sure.
Or has it been written by ChatGPT that's full of superlatives?
Yeah.
Anyone can say about themselves.
Yeah, there's going to be a little bit more of that, isn't there?
It does. I think I'm a great believer in version 1 is better than version none. And you're not going to get the CV right at the first time. So use the benefit of people like us and our experience to say, how can I improve that? What can I do differently? Before, and this is, I think, another thing, isn't it? Have that CV ready. Because chances are, when the perfect job comes around, if your CV isn't in the right place and 95% ready for that 5% worth of tailoring, you'll rush it, make a hash job of it, and it won't perhaps get you to the first stage interview.
Definitely.
So almost having that as the first port of call in any job search, even if you're just tentatively, passively keeping an eye on the marketplace, it is a great thing to
definitely.
do. And I understand, as you absolutely well know, it takes time and it's an effort. And even for people like us that do it day in, day out, it's still an effort. But it's worthwhile.
Yeah, and people really struggle with it, I find. Then so I get asked a lot. But I love it when someone sends me a CV and then says, I'd really value your opinion on it. Don't feel the need to be gentle. Just tell me. And I always say, I'm a total CV geek, I will tell you. But I also think one actually thing on that is you don't need to pay anyone to advise you on your CV. So I would put that out there. I think a lot of people are resorting to paying people to help them with their CV. And you know what? There's enough really well-intended, good recruiters out there that will help you without you having to do that. So you don't need to pay someone to do that. Speak to a recruiter, find the good ones, find the ones that you trust, and just ask them. And they will help. We will help. You can ask.
Yeah.
I'm noticing we're running out of time, Paul. I think... Oh, go on, sorry.
The thing that I think a lot of people want to perhaps understand, and one other common question, the length of a CV more. How long do you like it, or short do you like it to be? And how can you achieve what you're going to suggest?
Yeah, I think in my world, so the amount of CVs I receive that are 2 pages long from someone that's got 20 odd years experience, and I'm like, oh no, don't do that. You don't have to do that. Anywhere between 2 to 4 pages, I think, is perfectly acceptable. And if you've got 20 odd years worth of experience and achievements to share, then you should be able to share them. Just as long as your most current experience is on that front page, 2 to 4 is absolutely fine. So don't feel pressured to squeeze it all into 2 and end up not really being able to say anything about what you've done. That would be my advice.
So what I often suggest and recommend, I absolutely like to see the early stages of a career and how that person's career may have developed. For example, in our world, in finance, they may have qualified with a chartered accounting practice. And if that's a prestigious chartered accounting practice, one of the big firms, then that's a really interesting and very different route to training as a SEMA qualified management accountant industry. So clearly, your experience as an audit manager or an audit executive that you might have started out as, or an assistant management accountant training towards SEMA is less relevant, but it's still, in my opinion, worth being on the CV. And the way that I would do that is employer, date, job title. The content of those earlier career roles are less relevant. How long do you think people should, or how many years worth of experience should they go back for?
You see, I like seeing everyone's experience on the CV. I like going all the way back. So that is something I like to know. It's a gap. If I can't see it, I'll feel the need to ask. So I think you reference it, make it clear that we can see when you came into HR, what you did, what your work experience was, but really concentrate on those more recent roles, like the last 10 years, say, for example, if you've got that much experience, or the last 5 or 6, to really kind of deep delve into your experience, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. More, as you say, we are running out of time. What would be the one final tip you would want to share with people?
Do you know what? I'm going to quickly give you my top 5 because I can do it dead quick because I do speak at the rate of knots. So have a neat, simple format with bullet points and all the information a recruiter might require, including your location and contract details. No more than 4 pages, but do feel free to go over 2. Make sure that anyone reading it can tell who you are, what you do, and the context within which you did it in the first page. List your achievements under the relevant role in nice bullet points, and don't forget the so what. They're mine.
Absolutely. Great. And I'll list my 5. So we are making sure we're covering 10 here. Some of these are similar to yours more. Focus on achievements and be specific. Values, facts, figures. Include a personal statement. We've covered that. Contextualise your experience. We've explained how you could do that. Remove the content of early career history. Again, that's subjective, but if it's relevant, it should be in there. And tailor it. Take time to make sure it's relevant and tailored to the application.
Yeah. And if we'd have been doing this 27
Hopefully,
years ago, we'd have been
useful
saying, put it
insights
on some
memory.
nice cream paper. And but the world has moved on from that.
It has. Although I'm pretty sure I've still got stock of that Conqueror paper that I bought from Staples in 1997 when I was sending out my first applications.
Might come back into style.
Absolutely. More, thanks so much for joining us. We'll have another one of these Recruiters Roundtable next month. Hopefully this has been useful for everyone. Thanks so much for your time. We'll see you soon.
Bye.